Man, that was a long break for us, and I forgot this is the first time Jordan's actually gotten to be on an episode with the actual intro. Jordan, it's been a very interesting couple of weeks, and I think the Dolphins have been on a roller coaster of emotions. Dolphin fans, really. But first of all, Happy New Year. How you doing?
Happy New Year, man. The intro sounds great. I love it. The thing we got to find a way to add is put like a little box of ourselves in the bottom corner, because I was over here dancing and doing a little thing in the background. Yeah, it was nice. Shout out to our producer who did a great job getting that put together. But it has been. There were some highs beating San Francisco. There were some lows losing to the Jets. And there was a little bit of the in-betweens, which was the Cleveland game. So the season's over. We have a lot to talk about today. Chris Grier's gone.
Christopher's not gone.
Chris Grier's not gone. Mike McDaniel's gone. Kidding. Mike McDaniel's not gone. Danny Crossman is staying. Kidding. Danny Crossman is gone. And the surprising name is that Wes Welker is gone. That one I'm not kidding about. So Chris Grier, Mike McDaniel back. We'll talk about their press conference. We'll talk about a lot of stuff there. Danny Crossman, Wes Welker, so far the first two names that we've seen and what are probably going to be some more changes here for the Dolphins. Do you think these are the only two assistants since we announced them together that are gone? Or do you think that this is just the first set of meetings and there are some more changes to be made?
I think more changes are possible. I'm not sure if there will be them right away, but I think these are the two that Mike McDaniel thought had to happen as quickly as possible. But we'll get into that in a second. Because it's been a while. Like, I haven't seen you since before Christmas. The last episode was right before the new year with Kev.
Right. You don't beat around the bush. You just want to say that you missed me.
I did miss you. But we're talking about the roller coaster of emotion. I'll say this. A lot of people are like, and I'm pissed we lost to the Jets just because it's the Jets. That's the biggest thing. But I'm a positive person. What got me really negative for the last 2 weeks that I didn't like, even though I tried to be upbeat, was how Tua's injury was handled. Because it was kind of kept under wraps all week. And then the day before the game against Cleveland, it comes out he's doubtful. So I do believe Tua is actually hurt. But you listen to the news that comes out, you look at how it's been handled. Something just seems really murky and fishy about it that always just kind of sat wrong with me. And one thing I have always said is the thing I don't like about Mike McDaniel is if you're even a little bit hurt, he's keeping you out. And I think a lot of my anger came from me thinking he was doing that with Tua. And it was putting a bad taste in my mouth because we had to win those two games. We needed help, but we had to win those two games to get into the playoffs. So that put a bad taste in my mouth. I did not have any anger at Tua for that. Like, I saw a lot of people at that. I will never question Tua's toughness. I will never question his desire to win. But the injury really put me in a negative mindset for 2 weeks. And then anytime we lose to the Jets, I'm going to be negative. But at the end of the day, I also said, like, as mad as I am that we missed the playoffs, it was more of a case that we just had too big of a hole to dig. So what were your thoughts leading up to that?
Yeah, I did say, and it's kind of rings true, and it does suck to miss the playoffs. But this team, I think a lot less so than last year, didn't deserve to make the playoffs. Like you said, and I think that not making the playoffs is going to allow this staff and these guys and all that to realize their lack of attacking the offseason this past year and kind of the lackadaisical approach that I felt. Even going in, we talked about coming into the season. We're like, they're not really taking this thing at the intensity that we thought they would. And I think that that's going to change going into next season. I think that starting in the press conference, and look, you can say the fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times. And Chris Grier now has fooled us, 8 times, 9 times, 10 times?
Something like that.
He's been with the organization since 2000. So I think that there's people are a little scarred and want to see it proven before they actually believe in whatever these changes are. But I liked what Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel had to say. I thought they handled it with what I felt is a little less arrogance than I've seen them handle things with in the past, and a little less of that cockiness, and a little more of that. All right, like it was made clear to them that they have one more shot at this and one more shot at this only. And I think that this is where we see, hey, if Mike McDaniel can't make the necessary changes going into this next season, once we get into the season, play calling, game management, end of game situations, stuff like that. I think you already see with the firing of Wes Welker, there's going to be a little less of a players coaches mentality going into this season, which I think is a good thing. And it's going to be interesting to see the way we draft, the type of free agents we go after. Are we going to attack and finally add a physicality element to this football team that both you and I have been clamoring over for a really long time? I would be shocked if we don't spend whatever the budget is that we can spend on a player. I think we'll go right up against that to get a guard. I don't see us really drafting an offensive lineman in the first round. I think that that's going to shock a lot of people, and I think that offensive line is a position that I've mocked for the Miami Dolphins since I started doing mock drafts when I was in middle school. I think that this is finally an offseason where there's I don't think you can add a first-year player and bank on the possibility of what he's going to do. I think you're going to see us draft very ready to build in players. Tyler Warren is a player that I look at right away as a tight end that can come in and I think would be a perfect partner with Jonnu Smith there for a lot of the two tight end stuff we run. But I think free agency is where you're going to see us add plug-and-play guys that can come in to the system and fit. If Armstead comes back, he's the left tackle. If he doesn't come back, Patrick Paul's the left tackle. We need a left guard. Aaron Brewer's the center. We need a right guard, and Austin Jackson is the right tackle. So it's going to be very interesting to see the approach that Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel take, knowing everybody in the world knows that they got one more shot at this.
Yeah, and you mentioned the press conference. I was actually shocked. Well, I was, but wasn't shocked to see the negativity for it. Because one, it's Chris Grier, so there's going to be negativity. And like you said, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. But like, especially with Mike McDaniel, I thought they were very brutally honest to the point where I'm like, okay, they at least seem to get it, but talk is cheap.
But like, I think that if they would have come out and given the same little runaround, McDaniel kind of talking slow, well, this and that, we're all right. Chris Grier saying, kind of joking on last year. No, it's what happened isn't a joke. Our organization took a major step back from where it was 365 days before. And I think they realized the severity of that. And I think it showed in some of the things they said. Look, they can only say so much. And they can't make moves and sign players and add players and cut everybody and fire everybody on that day. But I think that the calculated moves that the Dolphins make, I personally, and I'll say that I'm wrong the day it happens, I don't see a Tyreek Hill trade in the cards. But I think they're going to try to be selective in the things they need to replace, the areas they need to replace, and the way that they're going to, like I said, approach the offseason.
Yeah. Nope, I agree. The thing that comes out a lot, or the thing that a lot of people are talking about, is the fine talk that Mike McDaniel came up with. I think you can pretty much guess who was and wasn't causing issues. Unfortunately, one of them made it very obvious with coming out of the game. I will agree and disagree with you. I don't think the Dolphins are going to give Tyreek Hill away, but I don't know how you can come back from what he did.
I just
Rashad Jones did the same thing. That's a little different. He had an out that year, but
Brett, let me ask you this: if you and I, best case scenario, we get told we have 1 year. If we can't turn this thing around in 1 year, we're done. We're fired. Okay. Would you want to get rid of your number one receiver? Look, emotions, you're out of the playoffs, your season's over. It came pouring out in a public setting. You know what? That sucks. That really, really sucks. However, do you really want to have to add a number one receiver while still having as much dead cap as you would have getting rid of Tyreek Hill? I think the number is like $28 million that would still be dead.
I think it's a little better if you can do it post June 1st, though.
Okay. So what would the number be? Do we know? Is it just slightly better?
I don't remember. Let me see.
Find the post June 1st number. But if it's something to where you have a lot of dead cap and you're already up there right against the number that you need to be at in a year that you have to add. Listen, we're going to go through a deep dive at some point, but you probably have to add one more quarterback. You probably have to add you're replacing probably Mostert with somebody, Jeff Wilson with somebody. So that'll probably even itself out. You have to add back-end receivers, which is relatively cheap. You need another tight end. You probably need two more tight ends, the amount that you play tight ends. You need two guards. You need offensive line depth. You need interior defensive line. Depending on what happens with Campbell, you need an end. Okay. You are probably fine at outside linebacker. Depending on what you want to do with Anthony Walker, you might need an inside linebacker. You definitely need 2 to 3 safeties, and you probably need a corner, and you might need a punter. And you probably need a long snapper, which a lot of those are cheaper. You could add those late in the draft. We have a number of picks there late in the draft, but some of those pieces that you're going to rely on, I don't know if I also want to have to add a number one receiver.
Yeah, the argument would be is don't look at it like we need all of this. You need to – do we need all that? Yes, but you kind of have to quantify it a little bit more. Would it be great to have 2 guards? Yes. Do I think you can get away with getting one premium guard, whether it's the draft or free agency, and then a cheap option? Yes.
Do you think – let's talk draft for a second. Will Campbell, yes. Will Campbell's there. He's the Dolphins pick. You move on. I don't know if there's another guy I really want at 13. I know you love M'Bow. Is that M'Bow?
Marcus M'Bow, yep.
M'Bow. And look, if that guy is there in the second round, I would trade up in the second round. Yeah. I would come back up.
It's tough. If we traded down, I would agree.
Yes.
But to your point, I would say as of right now, which is still way too early, if Kelvin Banks and Will Campbell are not there, you don't take offensive line early.
Even if Kelvin Banks is there, I
like Banks more than Campbell. I'll be honest. Yeah. At least for our system. The only thing I'll say is on M'Bow. Yes, I do.
Would you take Banks over a guy like Warren? Would you take Banks over a safety?
Safety, yes. Warren's a little tougher. I would love Warren on his team. I think, look, I learned looking at Twitter last night is most of Dolphins Nation, Dolphin fans, whatever you want to call them, most of them have never seen Tyler Warren play until last night, judging by the reaction that most people had. But, if you take Tyler Warren, it's good. But Calvin Banks and I don't like Will Campbell as a tackle. Like, if you told me we need a left tackle, I would not touch Will Campbell as a tackle.
No, I love him as a guard prospect.
I think him or Banks, I think you can sell and say they're plug and play left guards. Banks, you can also say, and people may not like, is they say, okay, if Patrick Paul isn't good, you can put Banks at left tackle. Banks, I think, is plug and play at both left tackle and left guard.
Well, that's you want that.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think we're going to have so many options at 13. That it's you could do anything and add to the team. I mean, we showed that last year. We didn't need an edge rusher. We got an edge rusher, and Chop was excellent this year.
Yeah. My point, the only thing I'll say about Tyreek is if some like it would have to, it gets a little trickier because of the post June 1st, but team comes with you for a second or third round pick. I don't think twice about it. I'd do the trade.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. I just think it's hard to come back from that. If he's back, I don't think you can give him a captain spot. I don't think you can.
I agree with that. But I also think that if every single thing a guy said on the sidelines was mic'd up and caught on a hot mic, you'd have a lot more of these situations where you think a guy is done.
Yep.
But I do look. You don't quit on your team, and it's funny because Calais came out after the game and was saying that a lot of the guys rallied around each other and came together and really wanted to finish the season on a high note. And it was super, super disappointing. And I think that 1,000,000% Tyreek was in the wrong. Fine, whatever type of reprimand you want for him. But I think when you look into next season, depending on – same thing I said about McDaniel. Remember, I said about McDaniel a couple weeks ago, I'd want to sit down and hear his plan for next year and hear him reflect on the season. I kind of feel the same way about Tyreek. I would, and McDaniel said he talked to him. Grier said he talked to him. I hope that he comes into next year understanding that his last big contract in the NFL is dependent on how he plays next season.
Yeah,
and I think we're going to get the best Tyreek Hill that is going to exist moving forward.
Yeah. The one thing I will say in Tyreek Hill's defense, if you listen to Jeff Darlington, you listen to Kyle Krabs, you listen to Reason, anybody who has a little bit of inside info, it sounds like there were issues this year, but it sounds like they all hopped up this year. People want to talk about Mike McDaniel losing the locker room. It does sound like everybody's saying he didn't lose the locker room. It was just some guys who had an attitude issue, had a bit of an issue this year. Tyreek, I would 100% bet Javon Holland with the contract issue and not playing well, was it? David Long was a captain. He got cut. Yes, it was for bad play, but it cannot be good for the locker room to see a captain get cut mid-season. I think OBJ probably had a bit of an issue in the locker room. So I do think in a lot of cases it will be addition by subtraction for the Dolphins.
Yeah, and I think that it's going to teach the Dolphins brass a lesson, which I feel like has plagued the Dolphins for a very long time. So again, I'm probably naive in saying this, but I think this year was more glaring than a lot of other years. You can no longer hire names.
Yeah, I will say this. I've been using the word arrogance for how Mike McDaniel approached the year. I'm going to change that to naivety. I don't think he was very ignorant or arrogant this year. I think he was naive in a lot of things. He was naive in thinking Skylar Thompson was ready. I think you could say it was arrogance thinking, because Adam Gase did this too. Oh, guards aren't that important. I can win with whoever guard I want. But I will say this as well. Shout out to Kings of Finland. He showed stats. I don't have the numbers, but I don't think people realize how important Austin Jackson was, especially to the run game, but also in pass protection, because you could put him on an island.
But Brett, you know, the thing is that I totally agree with your argument. Before I say what I'm going to say, note, we were better with Austin Jackson at right tackle than when somebody else was at right tackle.
Well, the point I'm going to make is the rushing numbers cut in half and yards per carry went a yard and a half under.
But the record flipped. We were 2-6 when he got hurt.
Yeah.
We were he got hurt what, week 9?
Yep.
We were 2-6 when he got hurt.
Yeah. There are points to both of them. But yeah, like everybody loves Kendall Lamb. He does a great job in pass pro, but he's bad run game. And
as good as he was in 2023,
yep.
He returned to the median of sorts and was the opposite of what he was. Wasn't he going to retire before last season or something? Wasn't
No,
there
he said
something
this
about
is
that
his
with
last
him?
year. He was thinking
So
about it. This is his last year. He's done. He's gone.
So, but that's another. Either way, you have to add a swing tackle.
Yeah.
Even if you obviously have Patrick Paul on the left side, if Armstead starts, he's there, and you have Austin Jackson on the right side. But you definitely need a good swing tackle. And if Armstead comes back, you might just want to find a right tackle only type guy. Because you have Armstead and Paul, and then Jackson and that other guy.
Yeah. This is also me hypothesizing a bit, and I get why a lot of people don't like it, but I also get where the team came from. Is the good teams, you develop those late guys, those UDFA guys, and this system, I've said it before, this system does a lot. You have them step up when needed. The issue became you have 4 years of tape on Robert Jones and Liam Eichenberg. You know what they are, and you could hide them when Armstead and Jackson are your bookend tackles. You cannot hide them when you have a very raw Patrick Paul or Jackson Carman or Kendall Lamb at right tackle. You just can't. Another hypothesis I have that a lot of people may not like and may actually make people even angrier is I kind of think, even listening to that press conference, I kind of think they were expecting Isaiah Wynn and Keon Smith to be the starting guards this year.
I think that Isaiah Wynn didn't progress in the way they thought he was going to progress.
He had a setback, and that's the other issue I have with McDaniels. It feels like we don't get a lot of clarity on injuries. They're either downplayed or they're just so vague.
It also seems, I could be wrong, it seems like we had a number of setbacks in guys that we were expecting earlier this year. I would be interested to know the insights, and I don't know if it was asked. I missed it if somebody did. What the relationship is with the medical staff, with the training staff, with the strength and conditioning staff, and what the plan is. Because I think that those were two main areas. The medical staff and the strength and conditioning staff, I think, were two areas of the Miami Dolphins that I was very underwhelmed with this past season.
Yeah. I do know that Grier and McDaniel said that the training staff and strength and conditioning staff are under evaluation. Everybody's under evaluation. We'll get into that in a second. Before we get into the coaches change. Reggie McKenzie is now looked at as the favorite for the Tennessee GM job. I have nothing bad to say about McKenzie. I have nothing really positive to say. He's just kind of there. But if he gets hired, I believe we get 2 third-round picks, one this year and one next year.
One this year, one next year. It would give us, obviously, an additional third-round pick. You'd have a first, a second, 2/3, 2/4?
I believe so, yeah.
Is that what it would be? Because I think we're getting a fourth for Christian Wilkins. Is that official, or is that just what is thought to be had?
It's not official yet, but it's basically confirmed.
Okay.
It's all but.
So a first, a second, 2/3, 2/4, another third next year. Who knows if he survives this process and Anthony Weaver comes back, he gets hired as a head coach potentially next year. You get 2/3. That is a great platform for the Miami Dolphins to add to this team, but they have to hit. This can't be drafting for 2026. This has to be drafting players that are going to make a difference on the 2025 team.
Yeah. Yep. Of course, the other news that came out about an hour ago, Danny, like you mentioned earlier, Danny Crossman, Wes Welker gone.
Which one do you want to talk about first, Brett?
Danny Crossman had to happen. I was actually worried for a while that Jason Sanders was going to save his job. But look, it doesn't matter how good your field goal kicker is. We didn't have a special teams touchdown. We're not getting blocks. We're statistically one of, if not the worst. The unit is constantly making unforced errors. Even if it's not all on you, if your unit is constantly making mistakes, have to make a change. And I think you are leading the charge for who you think the Dolphins should go hire.
Yeah, Darren Rizzi.
Yeah, bring Darren Rizzi home. I'd agree. hope there's not burned bridges because I think I could be wrong, but I think he kind of left under not so great terms when he didn't get the head coaching job.
Yes, but also he's now had an opportunity to go out there and try to get a head coaching job. And he was the interim head coach in New Orleans. I do know his son plays high school football in South Florida. So I think that coming back down here and returning is if you give him kind of the special teams coach role and the associate head coach role. And you know what, Brett? Honestly, 1,000% honest, if we go into next season and Mike McDaniel starts off slow and Mike McDaniel gets fired, I would take Darren Rizzi as the interim head coach. And I think that if he looked around the staff, yeah, Frank Smith would probably have a say, but Frank Smith might not survive this as you do.
Yeah, shout out to the dive bar. We're having Jeff Darlington on. I listened to him, and what Jeff Darlington said is Mike McDaniel needs his own Mike McDaniel. And what he was saying is when he was in San Francisco, Kyle Shanahan would bounce ideas off of him with game planning, with play designs, with all that stuff. And he flat out said that Mike McDaniel doesn't have that here, which...
You think he thought Welker was going to be that guy?
I was going to say, I wonder... my initial impression is that Frank Smith. I'm not sure because I think Frank Smith also more oversees the tight ends and the offensive line. I thought it might have been Bevel, but Bevel's getting offensive coordinator interviews. But I think with Welker being fired, I think it might have been Welker. He came from San Francisco with Mike, so he knows what he wanted to do. So I could see it. And I don't know if we spoke about it, Jordan, but I know me and Kev spoke about it a couple weeks ago. He's one of the coaches where it's like he's not really developing talent. The unit's making mistakes outside of the stars. Is that him? Is it he's being asked to make chicken salad out of chicken shit? Like John Embry did a horrible job with tight ends this year, but am I going to blame him because he was given Julian Hill and Durham Smythe? Probably not.
I said this to you before the show, and I said it on Twitter a couple times. Can you name one player, that over exceeded expectations with Wes Welker?
Trent Sherfield. That's the only thing I will give because I expect him to be a camp body, and he was our third wide receiver year one.
Okay.
But to your point, and River Craycraft too, because I, again, didn't expect anything. That's expecting nothing and getting something.
But my question is, how much of that is them early on in this system, just knowing the system?
That's a good question.
And knowing McDaniel's way. And how much – and those guys now in year 3 in the same system, getting those opportunities in camp and in preseason.
Yeah. Now, to your point, OBJ way underperformed. Braxton Barris, you and I said when we started this podcast, he would be a huge upgrade. And I don't think he should have made the team out of camp.
Yeah,
he's as a wasted pick. I don't even know why we went and got Grant DeBose, but I'm not going to blame him for Grant DeBose.
But like a guy like Grant DeBose comes in, we've talked about the wide receiver rotations.
And that's another thing.
And so that to me is something that I look at as a glaring point that a receiver coach would have handled. And I think Tyreek and Waddle spent a lot of time on the sidelines. A lot more, could be wrong, a lot more than I would say a lot of other teams' number one receivers spend. Now, how much is that is Tyreek? How much of that is Waddle? He's been nicked up a lot. And how much is that is Welker's rotations weren't really fitting in with what's best for this team right now.
Yep. And just for everybody listening, people ask what kind of impact do position coaches have? They set the rotation. They say who's getting playing time. Depending on who they are, and I do think Welker was one of these coaches where I think he's heavily involved in installation of plays and game prep. I think he was one of the top lieutenants on the staff. I think he had more say than most. And the rotation is the reason why for weeks I've been saying I think Eric Studesville should go because I think he was giving too much of a load to Achane. Now the counterpoint is Achane probably should have been a Pro Bowler this year. So you look at that development there for Studsville. Now I still think Studsville could be gone, but that's the argument. And like you said, what does Welker have to hang his hat on is Malik Washington being having a really good end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, Malik Washington came on, but I also think Malik Washington's a good football player. So to me, Malik Washington didn't really exceed expectations. He kind of met expectations. And I don't think that what I'm talking about is Wes Welker really took anybody and rose them above. You talked about position coaches, a lot of position coaches. You watch film, and wide receiver coach, for example, is watching a lot of film on the other team's DBs and telling the offensive coordinator, okay, these are the types of routes based on the receivers we have, based on the way their corners play. These are the types of routes that I feel we should run. That way the offensive coordinator can go and start building his plays, taking what the receiver coach is telling him the receivers should run, taking what the offensive line coach and the running back coach come up with that the running game should look like. The quarterback and the receiver coach will work a lot together. The offensive line coach and the running back coach will work a lot together. And that's kind of how the puzzle pieces of an offensive install will go. So I think that the room of Bevel, Welker, McDaniel / the room of McDaniel, Studsville, Frank Smith, Butch Berry. I think that the Frank Smith, Butch Berry area of it, even Studsville might be okay. I think that Bevel, Welker side, McDaniel felt needed to change. And I would look for whoever they bring in for a receiver coach. I'll be very interested to see if it's a receiver coach, assistant head coach, or just simply a receiver coach, because that might give me a little insight on what that guy's role is going to be in the offense. Do you want somebody, some coaches just want somebody that's going to work out the players, put them through a really good workout, then watch film and get them prepared on the game plan. Some head coaches are going to want their receiver coaches to have a lot more input in the day-to-day of what the team is going to do. Especially for, sorry to be long-winded, especially for a guy like Mike McDaniel that also calls plays and also is the head coach and also for all intents and purposes of the offensive coordinator. So you need those guys in the inner circle to really pick up a little more slack. And I just feel, and it's obvious with the decision today, Mike didn't feel like he was getting that from Wes Welker.
Yeah, and I think you and I talked about this with a couple people on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. One thing that came out consistently in press conferences from Tua and McDaniel where people were in the wrong spot. And usually it was a wide receiver. You look at the film, Eric Smith on his offensive line block breakdowns, especially on X, show it all the time. Tight ends miss a lot of blocks, but a lot of our penalties come from wide receivers holding. You got to block. No block, no rock is what they say. And we're bad blocking with the wide receivers. We're having procedural penalties a lot too. At the wide receiver, some of that is the tempo, some of that is the motion, the constant motions. But again, like we said with Danny Crossman, when your unit is making a lot of mistakes, you're going to be held responsible. And I'm not saying Walker's a bad coach. I'm not saying he should have been fired, but you put everything together, you can kind of see why it happened.
Do you think that Rizzy comes back?
It's an option. The other thing I can think of is I forget the guy's name, but we hired an assistant last year. Remember, Rizzy was an assistant special teams coach for us under John Bonamingo, and Bonamingo was awful. Rizzy got promoted because Bonamingo got fired after, I want to say the Jaguars game or Jets game years ago. And Rizzy came on and he became one of the best special team coaches in the league, if not the best special teams coach in the league. So I think it's kind of hard to say. I would like to go get someone, whether it's Rizzy, whether it's Dave Taub. I would like to get someone more established, because if for no other reason, it shows the fans that you are serious. And I think part of the thing for this offseason is Mike McDaniel and Chris Grier have to win back the fan base. So I think they do have to go all out. And Stephen Ross has his faults as an owner, but he is not going to cheap out on anything.
Yeah. At receiver coach, there's a name I keep looking at. If the Jets don't hire Rex Ryan, which we can talk about the Jets in a second, Rex's son, Seth Ryan, is the assistant receiver coach for the Lions. And he's a guy that I could see the Dolphins bringing in as a replacement for Welker. I look for guys that have played. He played at Clemson. I look for guys that are young. He's in his early 30s. And I think that those are the two combinations that you're going to look for in guys that might kind of bring in. What do you think, Brett, of all the names that the Jets have interviewed so far to this point?
I was very curious why
some
they
really crazy names.
They interviewed Mike Loxley and Rex Ryan.
So these are the names. These are all the names that the Jets have interviewed. You ready?
Yep.
It is Mike Loxley today, or whenever they asked for it. Matt Campbell, Ron Rivera, Mike Vrabel, Rex Ryan, Matt Nagy, Steve Spagnuolo, Brian Flores, Josh McCown, Vance Joseph, Brian Greasy, Aaron Glenn, Jeff Ulbrich, Bobby Slowick, Arthur Smith, Darren Rizzi, Joe Brady. That is the definition of casting a wide net.
Yeah, they are casting a wide net. I am curious to see exactly who they go with. Give me 1 second. Sorry, I'm like, for once I actually am working a little bit. So
Brett, while you do it, I'll give you 3 names. How about that? I'll give you the guys I think are my top 3. Number 3, most likely chance. I am going to go, looking at this list, number 3, I'm going to go with Brian Flores. I think that the Jets and Dolphins always kind of love doing that with each other. I think that Flores really has turned around his perception, both in Pittsburgh and in Minnesota. And I think that the Jets are going to kind of stick, personally, I think, with a defensive coach mindset.
That's just what they do. They don't go offense.
Exactly. So Brian Flores is the guy. I just think his whole lawsuit with the NFL, I think it's very hard to be a head coach in the league when you have active lawsuits against other teams. I think people are going to like having him in that coordinator role. I think it's going to take a very, very specific organization to give him a head coaching position. The other job I see that makes sense for Brian Flores is Chicago, simply because of his relationship with Ryan Poles. I could see the Bears ownership wanting to pair the two of them together in a Grier and McDaniel, kind of like they're in this thing together, and if they're gone, we're cleaning house again type mindset. But number 3 for the Jets, I'll go Brian Flores. Number 2 for the Jets, I'm going to go Arthur Smith. I think, again, son of the owner of, FedEx, who I'm sure has ties to Woody Johnson. A coach, again, former head coaching experience, but he is an offensive coach. He's shown they can be physical being the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. And he's a guy I think might interview well with what the Jets are looking for. But the number 1 coach that I think the Jets are going to hire, this is going to surprise you, Brett, is Steve Spagnuolo. I think for some reason, looking at him, something to me screams that's the guy the Jets are going to hire. I think I listen to God Bless Football, which is what Stu Gatz and Billy Gill and Mikey A, and they do a great job over there. I listen to him weekly, and they have Spagnuolo on all the time. And Spags has talked on multiple occasions this season about wanting to be a head coach again, about having that itch, about wanting to do it. And he has had, to me, one of the most impressive units in all of pro football this year. The Chiefs defense, for what the Chiefs have done going 15-1 or 15-2. You want to talk about Mahomes. You want to talk about Travis Kelce. Steve Spagnuolo has been a very, very impressive defensive coordinator, and I think has a good run as a head coach in him.
Yeah, he kind of had that. He only got that chance with the Rams, like what, 12, 15 years ago, something like that. He hasn't had a chance since, I would say, and I think you and I have talked about this on the podcast. I think he is one of, if not the best big game coordinators in NFL history. What, he got 4 Super Bowl rings now? It's kind of hard to argue that, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's something there, and I think that if not the Jets, I think either this year or even next cycle, I think Steve Spagnuolo will be a name that a team hires as their head coach.
Yeah. From what I've heard, and this could be wrong as I put my work laptop over out of the way.
Let's go. Brett's back to football. Jordan can stop his spewing, lingering for too long.
The name I keep going back to for them, if he doesn't take the Saints job, is Aaron Glenn.
I think he's going to take the Saints job.
I think he might, but I think that would be the ideal fit for the Jets. We know this, though. The Jets are going to get it wrong. They may get a year of excitement, but they're going to get it wrong. Yeah, it's tough. I'm more curious who they hire as GM because, again, they're going to get it wrong. But
how crazy is it, though, that there was a meeting between Woody Johnson, Mike Tannenbaum, and Rex Ryan in 2025 about the New York Jets?
Yeah, I think I have a sneaky suspicion that Woody Johnson is gonna rehire Rex.
You think?
I think there's a good chance. I think he just wants. Look, Woody Johnson only cares about the back page. He wants to be in the back page. He wants the attention, and Rex is going to give him the attention.
He's on the back pages. Should he want to be on the front page?
It's what they call it in New York, the back page of this. Whatever.
I think the back page is something else, Brett.
Yeah, whatever. He might be on the back pages too with his foot fetish, but but yeah, I don't know. Like I see all these people getting nervous about what the Jets might do. I know they were linked to the Badonzi, the Chiefs assistant GM who I announced. Yeah. It sounds good, but you know what? I was told we should be worried when the Jets got Brett Favre. We should be worried when they got Zach Wilson. We should be worried when they got Mark Sanchez. We should be worried when they got Sam Darnold. We should be worried when they got Aaron Rodgers. And they're still the Jets. So I really haven't thought about the Jets. I kind of hope they do get Flores just because I think it adds – I love blood feuds, and I think Flores versus Tua would add a blood feud to the rivalry. Like, I kind of want to see it. Plus, people talk about it, and I know you and I talked about it where it's like, oh, it'd be like Flo, I think, has done a good job of revamping his image, especially I don't know if you heard what Fitzpatrick said about him recently on his podcast.
He did.
Where it's like, yeah, he was a different – what's that?
He went at him a little bit.
He went at him a lot, but yeah, it was a different person. I don't think Brian Flores respects or knows offense enough to get a good offensive coordinator. And in this league, you need a good offensive coordinator.
Yes.
Kind of wanted to go back to this too, because we kind of talked about it. And you asked me this earlier about assistant coaches for us who could be gone. I would not be shocked if Frank Smith leaves. Just like I said, comments Darlington made to the dive bar makes me think that
there's more.
There may be more change. I think, like I said, Mike McDaniel needs someone he can bounce ideas off. Or I believe Reason said this in his podcast: is Mike McDaniel needs someone who's going to say no, Mike. So I think Frank Smith may be gone. Darrell Bevell had an offensive coordinator interview with the Browns. I think he could be gone, but that's fine. Don't want to lose him, but I think we have an assistant. Yeah, you've been grooming an assistant quarterback, and really, I'm not going to blame them for Skylar Thompson not being ready. I'm going to blame the decision makers for thinking Skylar Thompson was better than he is, but I'm not going to blame him for that. And really, what Tua needs help with is not something a quarterback's coach can teach. It's just slide. So I don't want to lose Bevel, but I'm not going to be upset if he leaves. I honestly don't think it would be that big of a loss. I would not say Studesville's completely safe just because he's been here since Adam Gase. So I have my issues with his rotation, but he did develop HN. So we'll see there. The only offensive coach I think is safe, two, are Butch Berry and John Embry. I think anybody else could be gone.
I agree with that. And I think that the defensive side of things is on hold for right now until a Weaver decision is made. And I think at that point, McDaniel and Weaver will sit down and figure out the defensive side of the ball.
Well, it does sound like from a lot of people that they're talking about Anthony Weaver is he's going to very much take a Ben Johnson approach where he's not going to come. So
he's another guy. He could get our head coaching job in a year.
He could. Yeah, I don't think I'm not as worried about losing Weaver because I think he's going to be very, very selective.
I agree.
And if you listen, I know you listen to the coaching rumors. A lot of people are going to turn down the Bears and the Jaguars jobs because of the GMs. Yes. The rumors are Ryan Poles does not want Ben Johnson because he thinks Ben Johnson wants control. Don't trust that. Trent Baalke is notoriously one of the most dishonest people in the league as a GM.
You see what Khan said with him on there right next to him?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I think Baalke is going to cost people. Like I know people are like, oh, Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. Baalke's going to cost them. I think it's coming out like I this may be a hot take too, but I think Tom Brady and Bill Belichick their success hid that the Crafts are actually not really good owners because I think a lot's coming out now about the drama behind the scenes with Gerard Mayo. But they're getting Mike Vrabel anyway.
Yeah, they're definitely getting Mike Vrabel.
But do you want to be part of the Vegas Raiders? Like, do you want to be part of the Raiders?
You know what would make a lot of sense? Vegas going after Deion.
After who?
Deion Sanders.
No, that's the rumors that he said he would talk to him.
Like if they can find a way to get either Shador or Travis, one of the two, they can find a way. I think he'll listen. Yeah. If you see personally, I would keep Callahan if I was Tennessee.
I think they are. Like you and I talked about, it's not all on Carthon, but he was fired because they destroyed a team that looked close to contending.
But if you were the owner of the Titans, would you take Shador and Deion? Both?
I would keep Callahan, I think.
I'd keep Callahan.
I think the thing with the Titans is it doesn't matter who the coach, who the GM is, they're going to build up the offense. They're going to be a running team. That's who they've been their whole existence. And I don't know if you knew that, like, that for a while there was a joke that since they moved to Tennessee, up until Taylor Lewan retired, they only ever had 3 starting left tackles in their history until Lewan retired. So they're just going to build up that offensive line. They're going to be a running team. I could see them looking at Deion if he could guarantee him and if Shador would come in. But I think Callahan's is a good up and coming coach. I think getting rid of Vrabel was a short-sighted decision, but that's not on him. I think I'd roll with him and just say, hey, we just got it wrong last year. I think if they go quarterback, I think they're going to go Greg Ward though.
Greg Ward and OJ Mayo are the 2 top picks. You got the former Houston quarterback receiver, and you got the
Cam Ward. Sorry,
Greg Ward was with Houston?
Guys, I've been working. Cam Ward, whatever.
No, but I think it's they're 2 polarizing figures. at quarterback. I think that you're going to see as time goes on, Jackson Dart will really settle himself into that quarterback 3 role in this draft class. I think Jalen Milroe will get overdrafted by somebody. I think that's a guy.
I wouldn't touch Milroe.
Huh?
I wouldn't touch Milroe.
No, but I think somebody will. I think that you'll see a team that's sitting like a team like the Raiders are a great example of this. The Browns are a great example of this, which the Browns situation is a little more complicated with it looking like Deshaun might not play next year. I think now there's a higher chance that they take one of the quarterbacks. But a team like the Raiders makes a ton of sense to trade back up to like 31 or 32, like in that 29-30 range, and get an extra year on Milroe, bring back Minshew, and let Milroe sit a full year.
Honestly, if I'm one of these QB needy teams, I'm kind of like, Nussmeier's better.
Of course.
Arch Manning looks like he's going to be better.
But I think Arch Manning stays another year.
Yeah. He didn't look good last night, but the Penn State quarterback, who I will not name because my roommate's home and he's a Penn State fan, is a good prospect.
So you couldn't see, let's say, the Jaguars moving back up just a little bit and taking a guy to sit behind Trevor Lawrence. You could
not in the first.
What if Rodgers announces he's coming back for one more year? You don't think the Jets could trade like the 42nd pick and something in the future to come up and try to get Milroe?
I think they could, but I'm also going to say this. He lost to a team. He lost to a Michigan team that was sitting everybody.
Pause. I'm not saying that I would. I would not. I personally would not. But
I'm a Michigan fan,
could see a
and
team.
If you lost to this team, that is a fireable offense.
You did.
Yeah, I'm saying that.
But you can say that the worst Michigan Wolverine team in your memory beat.
Oh no, I've seen some worse teams than that.
They beat
my
both
freshman year
Ohio
of college.
State
We were a 3-win team. I've seen some worse ones.
And how about Indiana? Can we talk about that? Indiana's 2 losses. For everybody, all the crap they talked about how Indiana didn't look good against Notre Dame, it didn't belong or whatever. Notre Dame looks pretty damn good. And their 2 losses are at Ohio State and at Notre Dame. I will say that are the teams that are not in the national championship game. So everybody other than Ohio State, because I'm going to say they're going to beat Texas, and Notre Dame, I think that Indiana has the best resume in the country.
When you also consider that Curtis Rourke played the whole season on a torn ACL.
And did you see his finger?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. Curtis Rourke is a dog. That's a guy that I would take.
That is a guy that if you want to back up, like I know everybody, and I say we own this, like literally with talking the quarterback position. All I'm going to say is this: Tua, stay healthy. I don't care about anything else. You're the quarterback as long as you stay healthy. So learn how to fucking slide. Play some baseball this offseason. Learn to slide. That's all I'm going to say for Tua. But for anything else, I think Snoop Huntley, for as good as he looked against the Browns, looked that bad and undid all his goodwill against the Jets. And I'm going to say this. I don't care if he says, oh, as soon as you say the ball slipped, like as soon as you make an excuse like that, you're gone to me. Curtis Rourke is probably, if you want to get a developmental guy to be a quarterback, that would be the guy I would look at.
Yeah. I do have one question for you before we get off. We predicted a lot throughout the year who we thought was going to win the Super Bowl, who we thought was going to be in the Super Bowl. So, Brett, I want to know one final time going into the playoffs, who is in Brett's Super Bowl, who wins Brett's Super Bowl, and who is the Super Bowl MVP?
I've been riding with the Ravens. I'm still going to say the Ravens are going to make it. Here's what I will say, and I'm going to go with that too. I think with KC getting the bye, getting the first overall season, getting the bye, I think sitting all their starters against Denver might bite them.
I agree.
I do not like if you have that bye, history has shown sitting people is not good.
I don't think Houston can beat them, but I think if the Chargers win at Houston, Brett, in any sport, it is hard to beat a team 3 straight times.
Yep.
It's hard. And if the Chargers come in winning a game at Houston, I would be worried if I was a Kansas City fan about Harbaugh coming in. He knows how to do this. He knows what he's doing. I could see the Chargers doing something and beating Kansas City in Kansas City.
Yeah. And with the Ravens, people will talk about how good Lamar is, and he is. Like, literally, it's either him or Josh Allen for MVP. I think you can go back and forth either way. But people forget just how good Derrick Henry's been this year. He's been insane. I just think they're built for January football. And as good as the Chiefs are, you never want to bet against them. They've been playing with house money a little bit too much for my liking this year. Like, you can't just turn it on. And it does eventually bite you. So I'm going to say Baltimore. Also, I refuse to ever pick the Bills for anything positive. So I'm not going to pick the Bills to get to the Super Bowl. I've had the Eagles the whole year. I'm going to say the Eagles again. Saquon's playing at another level too. Plus the difference between them and Detroit is health. Detroit is so injured. It comes back and it eventually bites you. And everybody loves Dan Campbell. Everybody loves Ben Johnson. Everybody loves their aggressiveness. It's easy to forget last year in the NFC Championship game, they made stupid decisions that ended up costing them the game then. And you love bravado when it works, but they've shown they just occasionally just do stupid shit. And I think that now, granted, the team I'm picking is coached by Nick Sirianni, who also does stupid shit. But I just think the fact that he's been to the Super Bowl before and his team's just healthier, I think that's the difference. I think the Ravens beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and I think Lamar Jackson wins the Super Bowl MVP.
Brett, the whole season.
Yep.
The entire season, I have said the Ravens and Lions.
Yep.
Since preseason, I said Ravens, Lions. Week 1, I said Ravens, Lions. And every single week this season, I have said Ravens, Lions. I'm going to say Ravens. I'm not going to say Lions. I believe that every single one of the 6 teams that are in the NFC playoffs, the Rams, the Vikings, the Bucks, the Commanders, the Eagles, the Packers, I think all of them have a case as to why they can beat the Lions.
I'd agree.
I think that whoever comes out of the Rams and Vikings game has a real chance to beat the Lions. I think Matthew Stafford going to Detroit. Think back to that week 1 game in Detroit. Detroit should not have won that game.
Nope.
So I think the Rams would come in. McVay is a great coach. I think he can win that. I'm going to copy you. I'm going to say the Eagles and the Ravens. I am going to go with the Ravens to win the Super Bowl like you. And I'm going to go with Derrick Henry to win the Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, it just feels like that's what it's shaping up to be. But yeah, it'll be interesting. But
and the last thing, and we'll end on this, January 10th, in April, who will the Miami Dolphins pick at 13?
Oh, it's still so early.
That's the new who's going to make the Super Bowl. I'm going to every episode from now till April. Who are we picking at 13? Who does Brett think?
Who Brett wants? is number 44 for the Penn State Nittany Lions, and that's Tyler Warren, who I think
didn't ask who Brett wants. Jordan asked who Brett thinks.
Who I think I have a feeling it's going to be Will Campbell.
Will Campbell. I think Will Campbell is gone by the time we pick.
If it's not him, I will say Luther Burden.
Interesting. I will say I think the Dolphins do what we want and take Tyler Warren.
I hope so. Is he better than Bowers? Is he better than Brock Bowers? He's different than Brock Bowers.
He's different than Brock Bowers. You might not call me crazy. I think there are people out there that'll call me crazy. He's the closest I think I've seen to Gronk.
A little different because I don't know if Gronk could do the Wildcat like he does.
I think he could if you let him.
Maybe. Yeah, I can see it. I can see it.
I think to me, he is as surefire as kind of it gets.
Yep. But all right. I think that's good. We are at just over an hour. Thank you to the 208 people who joined us. Jordan and I will be back. I don't know if we'll be back next week unless we make a hire.
I'll be back next week.
You'll be back next week. All right. Combine's coming up soon. We'll get ready for the Combine.
We'll talk about something.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Enjoy the weekend. I am going to adult laser tag, which just means free beer and pizza till 12:30.
Hey, I love that. Enjoy, Brett.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Have a great weekend, everybody.